Do you need to repair your major malfunction? Or are you just fine, just the way you are? Growing up these days, it's not quite what it was when we were coming up now, was it, Mike?
Not at all. As I'm known to say, any day of the 80s or 90s would kick the living crap out of the last 2 decades.
You know, school these days, for example, it's like Mr. Rogers was hired to consult and to figure out how to make school as soft as possible for the kids in school these days. I've done some substitute teaching in the last couple of years, and I remember wondering if it was, wondering where I was.
And here we have Mr. Rogers' neighborhood.
Because he went there, and like the kids, some of the boys were given their little fidget toys, and some of the kids were snacking the whole time. The kids who had special needs, for example, they were mainstream. Instead of being put in a special class, they were put into the regular classes with their minders. It was a jarring experience seeing what had happened to education.
I'm not an educator. I don't know what goes on in schools. I know what goes on with my kids in their school, but that's about it. But I'm not an educator where I'm up to date on this practice. Because I remember the slower kids, the special kids, they had their own classes. Hell, I even remember in the 80s when they took the paddle out of the principal's hands. Because, up until then, if you misbehaved, the principal could hit you with the paddle. Like, it was survival of the fittest. Like, coaches, when you played sports, would cut you. They would teach you resiliency by doing that. Like, if you want to play for my team, you got to be good enough for my team. Well, guess what? If you ain't good enough, you ain't playing. That's just the way it is.
I'm not complaining about how school is the way it is. It's just, is it really demonstrably that much better? Are the students learning that much more? Are they coming out of these new, softer schools knowing so much more? And I could hardly see that as the case, though.
I mean, listen, I'm just going to put something out here. You know why I liked my childhood? When you look at the fights between millennials and boomers, both of them leave the Gen-Xers alone. They're smart enough to know not to pick on my generation.
They have these anti-bullying programs in schools. And judging by what you see online, judging by what you, the videos that are coming out of what's going on in these high school bathrooms with the kids just beating the tar out of each other, these anti-bullying programs are not working.
I kind of remember you telling me a story about when you was a kid and you were getting bullied.
Yeah, my dad, he had an anti-bullying program. What he did was he made me join the wrestling team. I was a skinny kid. I think I never had to make weight for 119 pounds, and because I was just too darn skinny. But I showed up every single day. I did everything that was asked of me. I learned as much as I could. And the coach told me once, listen, you're not good at this, but everyone here respects your courage. And that was the end of bullying for me. I never happened again.
Look at what your dad taught you with this lesson. Consistency, discipline, fortitude, resiliency, right? Like, these are the things that have served you throughout your entire life. Like, good job, Dad, right? Like that's something that, like, when you look at those 4 characteristics of you, you see where you're getting. You're like, you know what? That's a good teaching lesson right there.
And it taught me that I could walk into the lion's den and survive it. I was in a school that had some really good wrestlers. I mean, one wrestler, the second year I was there, I made a bad takedown attempt on the kid that won state championship that year. And he threw me and broke my collarbone, and that was the end of the season. But he then won the NCAA Division I championship, so I was going against some really good kids.
Yeah, the only wrestling that I'm ever might possibly do will be in the WWE. That's like for me. But that being said, man, like I grew up in high school watching the wrestlers do their workouts. Like I played football. There was no weight limit in football. I wasn't small enough to wrestle. But I will tell you this much right now. Those boys worked hard. They worked diligent. They busted their butt every single day, you know? And a lot of those guys were on those like weird groups. You know, we had VASA, you know, the varsity athletes against substance abuse. You had to be like an honor student to be on that, you know? And these wrestlers would do it because of exactly what we're just talking about. And you see, when you look at the guys who I went to high school with who were wrestlers, they were some of the most successful people of any sport that I saw because of those four behaviors, those four characteristics, excuse me, right? Those four characteristics put something in y'all that not everybody got.
The thing that young people have to learn is that for the most part, what's being asked of you in life is something you can do.
I am Gunnery Sergeant Hartman, your senior drill instructor.
And the modern therapeutic mindset, Abigail Shrier, for example, wrote a book called Bad Therapy. It just came out, and I haven't had a chance to get a copy yet. But I saw her interview with Joe Rogan. And what she's said in the interview was that a lot of the time, with this therapeutic mindset that we have, kids are coming out of it with the attitude of, I can't do it, I need help, I need to be fixed. And that probably is not the case for most kids. I mean, there's some kids, obviously, who have real, genuine mental health problems. They're not the worried well. Instead, they have genuine problems. That's not what I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about your average kid who, instead of a diagnosis, what they need is the skills for life.
You will learn by the numbers.
When it came to average kids, here's how the average kid of my generation grew up. Every summer, right, we'd get kicked out of our house, if we were lucky, with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but very often without. And we somehow made it through the day without running around with water bottles. Oh, that's right, we drank from the hose, right? And we were, and the older kids got wiser and let the younger kids go first. Why? Because you turned on the hose, it was crazy hot. Like, there are things you learn. See, it's called problem solving. It's, you know, you're learning all these different things. And how did we figure out where everybody was? Where are all the bicycles? Like, we figured out stuff. We used our brains. And we went outside and we ran around and we played stickball, baseball, you know, football, basketball, whatever we wanted to play, we played. And and we knew to be home by the time the lights came out, you know, the street lights. We were good like that. And we knew to be quiet when the parents were talking. We had respect. We had all this stuff.
I don't know about you, but I was freaking awful.
Listen, I was a shitty ass kid. Who the hell are you kidding? I got the beatings I so richly deserved. Like, the corporal punishment worked well in my house, and I deserved it. I'm like, I don't understand. Here's the thing, though. When I go back and I talk about my parents hitting me, right? It hurt them more than me. They didn't want to beat the crap out of me on a regular basis. So, like, I'm the one who was really at fault there. And it's like, people don't understand that when we look at it, when we take away that punishment, we take away that thing that hurts, people aren't going to grow. People grow from pain. Like, all that human nature has shown, you want to find humans growing, find them getting better, give them some pain.
Yeah, but not all pain is gain. I mean, there is the difference between the pain of an injury and the discomfort of a tough workout, for example. I'll give you an example. Like, you know, a lot of times as an adult, people don't challenge themselves as much as they used to as a kid. Personally, one of the things I do is I'm a big enthusiast about working out. There's a workout program that I do, not because it's the best workout program, but it's because it's something that does to your mind. It's called super squats, and the routine is extremely simple. In super squats, you find a weight that you can squat 10 times, just barbell back squats, squat it. You can squat 10 times, and then you pace yourself, you stop. Every time you need to stop and rest, as long as you keep the bar on your shoulders. And then you squat the bar 20 times. You can do it 10. You did do it 20. And what that routine, after you do it for 6 weeks, adding weight each workout, what that workout teaches you is where your limits are. And where your limits are is a lot farther out than maybe you thought they were. Because if you've ever tried that routine or anything like that, you know that there's a special kind of pain associated with it. There's a very special bodybuilder from the 1980s. His name was Tom Platz, and he had a workout routine very similar to super squats. He did, instead of 20 times, he did it 30 times. The guy was an absolute madman because he did not have the body of a bodybuilder. He had very narrow shoulders and very wide waist, and but what he did was he just developed his legs and his lower body so darn much. It was absolutely incredible because he was able to just challenge himself and give all he had to give. And that's what people really have to realize, is that all you have to give is usually a lot more than you really think it is.
So there's this guy, so he goes to a Navy recruiter and he says that he wants to become a Navy SEAL. You know, I think his name is Daryl Goggins or something like that. I don't know, maybe
David Goggins.
David Goggins, right? Mm-hmm. So he says he goes and he wants to be a Navy SEAL. Well, the guy says, here's 2 reasons why you're not going to be a Navy SEAL. Reason number 1, you're fat. He said at the time I was around 300 pounds. He says, all right, I got the point. He says, the second reason is you're black. He's like, what the hell does that have to do with it? He says, in the entire history of the Navy, there's only been 35 black Navy SEALs. Statistically, it's almost an impossibility. Well, let me tell you something. Fast forward a couple of years, David Goggins was number 36, right? Now he talks about it, how he did it. Goes through the process. Every time he thought he was going to fail, he just kept pushing forward. He just kept pushing forward. He just kept pushing forward. Now the guy runs 30 miles in the middle of a desert with nothing but a water pack on his back, right? And you're just like, how the hell does he do that? And he does it like, he goes and he runs for a few hours, and that's his shtick. And he loves it because he wants to push his envelope. He wants to find, where are my limits? What is it that makes me me, that I can find my limits? What was I doing when I was fat? Is I was settling over and over and over again. And I'll let this go, and I'll let that go, and he says, I just was an angry young man. But then he goes, once I started pushing myself, and once I started finding where I'm going, follow that purpose, follow that destiny, what I need, and follow it with what? Discipline, consistency, fortitude, resiliency. What happens? He says, I made my goal. And not only did I make my goal, he says, you know what I found out? He says, I found out that when it comes to Navy SEALs, it's not the biggest, the strongest, or the fastest who become Navy SEALs. It's the ones who are most resilient.
But let's take the other side of this for a second. You can't be good at everything, right? There are certain things that are just not worth the effort. And not everybody, wants to get to get really rich, or to get really fit, or to get the best of this and the best of that, and something, because nobody can be good at everything. You got to choose what it is you're going to develop to direct that kind of effort at. And one of the things that I always thought was worth directing that effort at was finding a good woman and a good marriage. And they talk about these days the male loneliness epidemic.
The male what epidemic?
The male loneliness.
The male loneliness. All right, I'll tell you exactly why the male loneliness epidemic really is. What do women need? Women need love.
We need more than that, though.
Right, but women need love. Women need to be loved. They know that they need to be cherished. Now, if when I see my woman, I automatically give her love. But what do I need? I need respect. So when it comes to these relationships, women expect automatically to be loved just because of who they are. Why can't I say the same thing about respect? Why can't you just respect me for who I am? And what happens is that men don't get that respect. The women say you have to earn it. But
Well, you do have to earn it.
right, no, I'm not saying you don't have to earn it. That's not what I'm saying. But think about it. Respect should be given. That's your husband. Automatically, there should be a level of respect there. You know, like, and I guarantee you, listen, I guarantee you, women, I know there's a lot of women out there who are working their asses off during the day. But if they came home, if their man came home, walked in the door, and you come in there with a smile and a hug and a kiss, I guarantee you the rest of your night's going to go better. And I guarantee you, the more you do stuff like that, the easier and the better your marriage is. Because men need to understand that they feel appreciated. Men need that respect. Men need these certain things. But women feel that they should get the things that they need without earning it. Well, we need it too. And we should have to get it without earning it. Now, once we have it, the only way it's going to grow, the reason my respect and my admiration for my wife has grown, my love for her has grown, the reason why is because we work at it. We don't just take the bottom layer. We say we want more.
But by the same token, as I said, you got to earn that respect, right? The women, they need protection and provision, and they need a man who's got the strength and stability to demonstrate that he could provide that.
I got a question for you. She married me, right?
And
if she didn't respect me, why the hell did she marry me?
By
that point, hold on. By that point, if I haven't earned her respect, she should not have married me. If you marry me and you tell me, you want to spend the rest of that means you respect me. So if you're in a relationship where you're like growing and you're working with each other and so on and so forth, and she's not showing respect after the husband's already earned it, after the husband's continually earning it.
Oh, 1 second. There you go. Continually earning it. There you go. Now you got where I'm going with it. Continually earning it. Like when they shot the moon, right? When they put the spacecraft up there to go intercept the moon and land on the moon. When they got about halfway to the moon, they didn't just stick with the initial rocket burn that they had. You know what they did? They did a mid-course correction to make sure they were aiming at exactly the right point. So you can't just take what you had in the beginning and just say, okay, that's good enough. No, you're gonna get lost in space if you do that. No, you need to do your mid-course correction. You need to make sure every now and then that everything is going in the right direction.
Did you ever see the movie RV with Robin Williams?
No.
Okay, there's a scene where Robin Williams and his wife in the movie are sitting there talking. And they're both miserable in their marriage. Well, how did you get there? Because they became mom and dad. They stopped being husband and wife, right? So it's like, oh, I'll go take this kid to this doctor, or we'll pick the kid up from school, we'll do this, and it became all like, you became roommates. You stopped being lovers, you stopped being friends, you stopped being a spouse, right? So what happens? The marriage falls apart. But if a marriage like that fell apart, a marriage like that can also be rebuilt. Because it's not like you're all apathetic for each other. You just forgot about love.
And you had to do the mid-course correction.
Exactly. That's the thing, man. We put forth effort. When I remember I was doing this course in counseling about marital counseling. And I'm not a marital counselor by any stretch of the imagination. That's not my shtick, right? The only reason why I did it is because in the work and dealing with crisis and addictions, you had to know this stuff. So one of the things that they saw is whoever works the least in a relationship has defined the strength of the relationship. It's like we look at it. What we put into it is what we get out of it. So if it's lopsided, there's frustration. There's so much pain, sorrows. Let me rephrase this a different way. When it comes to a relationship, you want a healthy relationship, it's not a 50-50 thing. It's I give 100% and you give 100%. And when we put that in there and we act as one, man, our relationship is unbreakable. We're powerful. But see, here's the problem. To go back to this male loneliness, we don't have women who trust us anymore. We don't have women who want to be a part of that anymore. And here's the crazy shit. If I'm a woman, you know what I'm going to say? I don't have men who want to be a part of this anymore. I don't have men who want to do this kind of stuff. And there's reasons for it, which I'm not going to get into. But the reality is we're choosing not to do this anymore.
See, I don't know what you mean by anymore. I'm going to give you an example. Ever hear of Plutarch?
Say that again?
Ever hear of Plutarch?
No.
Okay, Plutarch was a ancient Greek writer from sometime in the 1st century CE. And he wrote a famous book of paired biographies. He would he'd do biographies of people like Alexander the Great and Plato and Socrates and all these people. And then he used to have a bunch of miscellaneous quotes. And one of the quotes he had was called "The Sayings of the Spartan Women." Now, you say modern American women are very hard on men. Well, you haven't dealt with a Spartan woman in your life. I'll give you an example. There was a battle that the Spartans participated in, and the Spartans got routed, and only one guy made it home. And he saw his mother and explained to her what happened. And she says, "Do you want to crawl back where you came from?" And he says, "What do you mean, Mom?" And she hitched up her dress and showed him her lady parts and says, "Okay, crawl back in." Now, that's a hardcore woman, okay? That's the kind of woman that if you fall off your white horse, she's going to kick your butt. And there was that famous TED Talk by Brene Brown, right?
I did not interview men for the first 4 years of my study. And it wasn't until a man looked at me one day after a book signing and said, "I love what you have to say about shame. I'm curious why you didn't mention men." And I said, "I don't study men." And he said, "That's convenient." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because you say to reach out, tell our story, be vulnerable. But you see those books you just signed for my wife and my 3 daughters?" I said, "Yeah. They'd rather me die on top of my white horse than watch me fall down." When we reach out and be vulnerable, we get the shit beat out of us. And don't tell me it's from the guys and the coaches and the dads. Because the women in my life are harder on me than anyone else.
So it's about vulnerability. Women, if you're going to believe Plutarch, and I don't see any reason not to, if you're going to believe Plutarch, you'll know that women need things from men, and if you're not in a position to give that to them, they could be very unforgiving. But like what you're saying about each giving 100% in the marriage, it's like a woman should know, or should try to figure out, is this man just slacking, and that's why he's vulnerable, that's why not everything's success? Or this guy's giving it 100%, I gotta be the Mr. Rogers there for him.
Like, I remember this one divorce I was involved with. The husband would hit the wife, but the wife emotionally abused the husband. How do you judge that?
So it's like verbal violence that was punctuated by physical violence?
Exactly. And you're like, how do you judge that? Oh, well, if you're a therapist, if you're a counselor, you're thinking, well, the verbal stuff is worse than the physical stuff. Because of that.
Sometimes, but sometimes not.
Exactly. That's the problem. The problem is we don't know, when do we need to be coddled? When do we need to be told it's okay? And when do we need to be told, shut the fuck up, get up, act like a man?
And the first and last words out of your filthy sewers.
Like, when do we even know this anymore? That's the problem in the world today, is that we've told men it's no longer okay to be men. And then what happens when men act like men? If you go to a bar, right? Who's going home with the girls? The men who act like men. Not the betas, the alphas. That's who's going. When we act like men, that's what they want. But then they don't want it at various points. It drives me mad.
Sometimes when you're challenged and your back's up against the wall and you really have to, you're in those do or die situations. So sometimes those can be those defining moments in your life. I'll give you an example just from my own life. In 1998, I was without a job and needed to pass the bar exam. 2-day exam. each day it's 2 3-hour exams, so it's 12 hours of test taking, and it's a very difficult exam. At the time, I was engaged to Samantha, who is, if maybe you know, is the most beautiful woman I've ever met. And so my choice was very simple. If I could pass this exam, marry the beautiful princess, and live happily ever after. Or I could fail, and I probably would have not been able to get a job. I might have had to move in with my parents and been a basement-dwelling, pathetic loser case. I mean, it was literally the choice between heaven and hell. It's like, okay, it's now time, to conquer or die.
At that point, when you're faced with that choice, like the world I grew up in was told, put on your big boy pants and get into the battle. And
that's what I did. So let me tell you the story about the day I got the results of the bar exam back, because this will show you just how stressed I was about the anxiety of whether or not I'm going to pass this exam or not. I had this job where I was going to universities and doing some sales with professors, and every few minutes I'd go back to the computer lab and see if I can check my bar results. This was 1998, and the website kept crashing, and I couldn't get on to find whether or not I passed. And as the hours passed, I got more and more stressed, and my head started hurting more and more and more. I don't know how I made it back from the university. I was staying at my parents' house at the time. No, I wasn't living there. I was visiting. And I don't know how I made it back. And I opened the door, and my father yells, "Be happy, you passed!" And all I said was, "Good." And I just walked upstairs, and I had to lie down. It was that much of a stress case. But you know something? Knowing that time I had that chance to, conquer or die, and I did do the conquering. That was really something that I took with me for the rest of my life, and that's something that I could always remember and draw strength from.
See, that is what you just did was typical male behavior. Men would rather die trying than never try at all. That's the way we were created. Whether we became that, whether we stayed that, is a different thing. But that's like part of being a man. Like we have to do, we have to be, we have to become better versions of ourselves. Because if we don't feel accomplished. We feel less than. We feel whatever. So that's why we do so much of what we do, to become the people that we need to be.
Guys, if it's between Mr. Rogers and Gunnery Sergeant Hartman, probably do better with the Gunnery Sergeant. But the women in your lives, if they know you've made that choice, if they know that you really are putting out and doing your best, they might do well to give you a bit more, Mr. Rogers.